In another time, the word quarantine meant isolation for exactly 40 days. It was a legal device restricting the carriers of contagious diseases like smallpox, cholera, and the plague. Now its use is being talked about in connection with AIDS. What do you do, for example, with someone infected with the virus who continues to engage in sexual practices that could endanger dozens, if not hundreds, of unsuspecting people? It's a problem one community has already faced. The central character could hardly be called mainstream, but the medical, legal, and ethical dilemmas this case presents will eventually have to be faced by every community in America. This is Farish Street. A lot of cities have one like it, a gambling club, a few gay bars, a couple of hookers on the corner. But this is Jackson, Mississippi, the Bible Belt. Not the kind of place you'd expect to end up an historical footnote in the battle against AIDS.
Most people down here, live down here, refer to them as punk. Police call them sissies or punks.
Vice Cop Phil Burnham has been patrolling here for 10 years, long enough to know that not everything is the way it seems.
There was a certain individual that we figured was a male dressed in female clothes. Every time we saw it, it would run from us and could outrun just about anybody on our shift. Could jump fences in high-heel shoes. And finally we caught it, and it turns out it was James McIntyre.
How many times have you been arrested on charges associated with prostitution?
They say 66 times, I think.
66 times. How much time did you spend in jail after each one of those arrests?
No time at all. Different this time, I guess they time I had been diagnosed with the AIDS virus, and they don't want me back out. They want me to stay in jail.
James McIntyre is a 28-year-old homosexual transvestite prostitute who carries the AIDS virus, not a combination that's likely to get you invited to the Jackson Rotary Club. When we first met him in January, James had been in jail for 40 days without a lawyer or a pretrial hearing on a trumped-up charge of unnatural sex. He's not sick, he does not have AIDS, but he can give it to other people.
Do you think you're in jail only because you got the virus?
I know I'm in jail only because I have the virus. Because all the other times I've been in jail, I wasn't kept up very long.
He says the only reason he's in jail now is because he's a carrier of the AIDS virus. Is that true?
Well, partially because he's an AIDS carrier, and we didn't want to release him back on the street unless we had to.
Jackson Police Chief L.C. Smith didn't have the slightest idea what to do with James McIntyre, and neither did anyone else in this conservative southern city of 250,000 people, which has seen only 13 cases of AIDS.
AIDS just came on Jackson all of a sudden when this came up.
The district attorney here said you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't.
That's true. Exactly right. Get him back on the street is, don't irritate the public, and if you put him somewhere and try to get him off the street, then this naturally others are going to think that you're violating his rights or this type of thing.
The city of Jackson's initial solution to the James McIntyre problem was an invitation to leave. Authorities bought him a one-way bus ticket to California and saw him off at the Greyhound station. It wasn't until months later, when police spotted a suspicious car behind a shopping center, that they realized it hadn't worked.
They approached the car and found Mr. McIntyre and a local businessman in the car, falling in love, so to speak.
Falling in love?
Yeah. It was James anyway. And knowing the situation that he was a carrier of the AIDS virus, informed the man that not only do you have a man instead of a girl, but this man carries a AIDS virus.
What was the reaction of the businessman?
Well, he was pretty much disturbed. He didn't know what to do.
How many men have you been with since March, since you found out you had the virus?
Well, since I thought I had the virus, I always use safe sex.
How many men have you been with?
Well, it's hard to say.
100?
Probably a little more. Well, I wasn't giving them anything, so I made sure of that.
That's hard to believe, when a person is out selling their services, that they're going to be practicing safe sex, because both people have to be practicing it.
A timeline
The case also presented hard choices for Mississippi's small community of gay activists, which under different circumstances would have rushed to the defense of anyone jailed because of AIDS. But Eddie Sandifer, executive director of the state's Gay Alliance, was just as concerned as everyone else about James McIntyre's inability to understand the consequence of his actions.
What he's doing is selling death.
So his saying that he makes all of his clients use condoms is not really good enough.
I would like to hear the clients say that. We have had, the office that I work in has had calls from some of the people he has dated in the past, and they did not practice safe sex.
Did you ever tell any of these men that you had the AIDS virus?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Didn't want to tell them. I'm sure if I had told them, I wouldn't have been having any business. I'm sure they would have ran away from me.
A guy could come down here and have anal intercourse with James and then go home and give it to his wife or to his girlfriend or to another prostitute. And she's got it. She's spreading it. Prostitutes down here do pretty good business.
Used to, we could say that homosexuality and prostitution were victimless crimes, the persons that were involved. It's hard to stand by that position anymore.
Unable to hold James McIntyre legally and unwilling to return him to the streets unchecked, local law enforcement tossed the case to the state of Mississippi and Dr. Ed Thompson, the man charged with protecting the public health.
It becomes necessary at some point when an individual is doing something that endangers the life of another to in some way impose on the rights of that individual. Their right to have sex does not include the right to spread a deadly virus through it.
And so, after nearly 70 days in an isolated cell, James McIntyre finally walked out of jail a free man. Almost. Dr. Thompson had issued an order making James the first man in America ever quarantined for AIDS. The quarantine does not restrict his movements in any way, but it makes it a crime for James to engage in prostitution or in any kind of sexual behavior without first informing his partner that he carries the AIDS virus.
You think James McIntyre is going to obey this order?
We don't know yet. We hope he will. If he does not, we will move to have him jailed.
How do you enforce something like this?
We can't be absolutely certain that, like any individual who chooses to commit a crime, he can't do it and get away with it. We are reasonably certain that if he returns to prostitution, we'll detect that fact.
The fact that there's a quarantine order in effect in Jackson, Mississippi has very little effect on someone who decides to move to Memphis, for example, or New York City.
Bob Marshall is James McIntyre's attorney, appointed by the American Civil Liberties Union.
In a way, this is almost an invitation to leave, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. I think I would leave if I were faced with a similar situation.
And leave town is exactly what James McIntyre says he wants to do. He did not think much of the county jail, and now that he's out, he doesn't think much of the quarantine order either.
What it says is, we got to tell people that I have AIDS.
So that you carry the virus?
Yeah, something like that. And if I get caught on the street, I spend 6 months in jail and a $500 fine. Failure to come on the street and had to use condoms every time I use sex, stuff like that.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think that's fair. And they're not treating anybody else like that.
Are you going to tell your sex partners that you've got the virus?
No. No.
The quarantine makes it against the law for James McIntyre to spread the AIDS virus in Mississippi, if someone can catch him. It probably won't stop him from spreading it on someone else's Ferry Street if he wants to. For the time being, the order has satisfied the public's demand for action, but it won't protect the public from AIDS. No government can do that. As Dr. Thompson says, AIDS is something people volunteer for with risky choices, and you can't protect people from themselves.